Welcome to the Pat White Show.
Well, welcome to the Pat White Show. It's a very special edition, and if you wonder where I'm standing, I'm actually standing next to the St. Joe River, right there at the dam that Coliseum Boulevard runs by. Now, this event that happened here back 55 years ago, frankly, was one of the biggest events that happened in the city of Fort Wayne. As a matter of fact, they say that some 250,000 people actually attended and watched what was going on. What was it? It was the Three Rivers Festival raft race. That was just one of the things that made this event, made the Three Rivers Festival one of the biggest events in the state of Indiana. Now, the raft race, that was huge. You had like 450 rafts. You had 250,000 people lining the banks of the St. Joe, all the way up here from the dam where they got in, down near the water filtration plant where they got out. It was a heck of a time. Just one of the events. Other events they had at the festival, well, let's talk about the bed race. Bed race, they had the beds set up. It was on Main Street. Groups were running. It had 10, 12,000 people attending that event. That was another thing that happened during the Three Rivers Festival that started in 1969. And then let's talk about another event. How about the Show Us Your Tan? Remember the WMEE Show Us Your Tan event? Oh, yeah, that was big. You get 10, 12,000 people. Yes, it was at the Southtown Mall, and then it was downtown. And I can tell you, during that era, plastic surgeons made a lot of money. You get my drift. So, another event during the Three Rivers Festival. And, of course, the beer tent. Who can forget the beer tent and everything that happened down there? It was all part of the festival. And back in those days, it lasted 2 weeks. And then at the end of the festival, the big fireworks display. But there was something that started the festival that made it one of the biggest events and the best attended events in the state of Indiana. What was it? It was the parade. That's right, the parade is what started off the entire Three Rivers Festival. Well, now the festival is sadly gone. But guess what? They're bringing back the parade. That's right, the parade is coming back. So let's talk about the parade. The Three Rivers Festival Parade was the big start off to the entire season. I mean, it was one of the biggest happenings you could go to. And I participated in that parade, well, more than once, back in the days when I was working at WOWO. You'd gather over the old big lot next to the old Allen County Ford place over on West Jefferson, past the railroad tracks. You wait for hours. The parade would gradually start, and you'd head down Main Street and turn up, so you could end up on Wayne and all those streets. Come down there. Finally, you work your way to downtown. You get to Calhoun, and then you head down toward the courthouse where the TV cameras were. Channel 21 was broadcasting it. It was something special, just to be seen on TV for a little bit. But you know what? It was something special. The parade said a lot about the city of Fort Wayne and the groups that were part of it. Well, that's gone now, because the whole festival's gone, frankly. But guess what? Some enterprising and patriot folks here in the city of Fort Wayne have decided that, you know what? Let's bring back the parade. And they're planning on doing it July the 19th. It's a Saturday, starting at 10 a.m., using pretty much the same route the parade took back in the old days. And it's your chance. If you want to be in the parade, yes, you can do it. Let's head to my office, and I'll tell you everything you need to know about this year's renewal of the Three Rivers Festival Parade. Well, welcome back to my studio. And now let's talk about what's going on with a revival of the Three Rivers Festival Parade. Different name right now. It's the General Mad Anthony Wayne Parade. And here's what you can do. You can go to the website. It's a great website. You can learn everything you need to know about being in the parade as a participant, maybe a volunteer to help, or potentially even a sponsor. Here's all you have to do. Check out the website by going to madanthonywayne.org. It's not a .com. It's madanthonywayne.org. Click through there. They got information on the parade, participating. You want to be a sponsor, all the rules and regulations. But important thing is to take care of, see when the deadline is. And that deadline is coming up, pretty doggone quickly. So if you want to be in the parade, get yourself registered for the parade. Like I said, it's coming up real quick right here later this month in June. So you want to get it done for that July parade. The parade happens on July the 19th. It's a Saturday, starts at 10 a.m. It's your chance to be part of history and remaking history and be part of the regular patriots who, frankly, are in this area. So if you want to have a good time, want to enjoy yourself, and be part of something really special, check it out by going to the General Mad Anthony Wayne Parade. It's at madanthonywayne.org. It's madanthonywayne.org. Check it out for yourself. Get in the parade, have some fun, enjoy yourself, and maybe help out or become a sponsor. It's your plan. It's your good idea. Let's bring back the Three Rivers Festival the way it used to be. And now we got some people that want to make it happen just that way. Today is June 14th, 2025, and today is the 250th anniversary of the United States Army and Donald Trump's birthday. Big goings on in Washington, D.C., big parade. But there's also an event going on today called the No Kings gathering, No Kings events. No Kings, organization fighting back against Donald Trump and the policies of his administration. Well, where did this No Kings movement come from? Do you think it's a grassroots? You better listen up, folks, because you're going to find out what's going on. Listen to this. Early Tuesday evening, as National Guard troops faced off against protesters and rioters on the streets of Los Angeles, powerful teachers union president Randy Weingarten hosted a virtual town hall with Democratic Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear and two leading political operatives in the Democratic Party. Leah Goldberg, founder of the political nonprofit Indivisible, and Reverend Al Sharpton, founder of another political nonprofit, the National Action Network. And there's more, folks. Follow along. Greenberg hailed the upcoming wave of protests this Saturday, which was today, to sweep through the already red areas of the country. And that's their quote, already red areas, marked with mostly Republican voters, as a stand against Donald Trump and his administration. Throughout the call, Weingarten herself beamed excitedly. Sharpton phoned in his enthusiasm about people with, quote, different political beliefs uniting. They touted Saturday's campaign as the hashtag No Kings protest. Now you say, where'd you get that? Who wrote that? That comes from the Pearl Project. Pearl Project is headed up by Asra Nomani. She is an investigative reporter and has been doing this for a number of decades. She founded the Pearl Project in honor of a friend and colleague, a fellow by the name of Daniel Pearl. He was a Wall Street reporter who was kidnapped back in 2002 by radicalized Pakistani militants. He was brutally murdered, and after they kidnapped him. Now, they demonized him as an American, a Jew, and a grandson of Israel. So she started up this foundation. She's an investigative reporter, and her job is to, uncover stuff. And right now, she has uncovered this entire thing about the No King protest. And if you think it's just grassroots people, regular folks getting up, all right, yeah, everybody has a result. If they want to protest, First Amendment says you have a right to do it. But when a protest is organized like this one is, this one may be something you folks might want to look at and ask yourself, now I know where the money's coming from to do this. All right, according to new research by the Pearl Project, the No Kings protest is being organized by an estimated, you ready? 198 groups, all of which are aligned with the Democratic Party and many of which claim tax-exempt, nonpartisan, nonprofit status. Collectively, these groups take in $2.1 billion in annual revenue. Now, Let me give you the breakdown of these 198 partners listed in the official publicity material from the financial political machines behind No Kings, because they have to file reports. Here we go. 3 official entries into the Democratic National Committee: the College Democrats of America, Manhattan Young Democrats, and West Side Democratic Headquarters in Norwalk, California. That's where it starts. 16 Democratic Political Action Committees, or PACs they call them, including, are you ready? Friends of Bernie Sanders, Progressive Democrats of America, and Vote Blue. They've got $19.4 million in spending power from political candidates, and that's where they send the money. 18 Democrat-aligned 501c3 organizations. These are labor unions, including lead organizer, you ready? The American Federation of Teachers, lead organizer, along with the UAW, the Communications Workers of America, the National Treasury Employees Union, and they have $1.1 billion in revenue. Most of their political contributions go to Democratic candidates. 76 Democrat-aligned 501c4s, political nonprofits, including, you ready? The ACLU, the Sierra Club, the League of Conservative Voters, Working Families Organization, Human Rights Campaign, Planned Parenthood Action Fund, and the lead organizer, you ready? Indivisible Project. They have $734 million in revenue. And then you have 47 501c3 nonprofits, legally restricted from partisan advocacy, including the innocuous sounding groups like the Unitarian Universalist Association, Accountable U.S. and American Humanist Association. They got $286.7 million for the cause. And lastly, 38 additional Democrat-aligned groups, including Michigan Resistance Coalition, Families Over Billionaires, 50501, Tax the Greedy Billionaire, and Mennonite Action with undisclosed financial amounts. This is who makes up those 198 people that are funding all of this. So you get a total of 465 groups aligned with the Democratic Party with combined revenues of $3.4 billion, organizing protests against Trump since January. You got that, folks? That's 465 groups with $3.4 billion to go against the Republican Party and Donald Trump. There's one called the hashtag Tesla Takedown Project. Tesla Takedown, sound familiar? Included an estimated 32 local and state affiliates of the Democratic National Committee from Florida to California, who put Tesla CEO Elon Musk in their crosshairs, and look what they did to him. Tried to destroy his company with money on the outside. Where do you think it came from? Now, these organizations are not, I repeat, not your local knitting club. They are professional protest organizers. For the No Kings protest, the group Indivisible Digital Asset Management Team. This is individual assets, individual group, 501c3. They have assembled an online digital brand folder. You ever wonder where you see all these signs that people have and they all look identical, they're all printed out identical? They've got an online file. You just open the file up. Hell, I use that template for my signs. It's online and set up by this individual digital asset management team. They got 29 brand assets in a folder marked. The folder is called Flyers, Rally Signs, and Printed Materials. 25 assets in graphic folder 8 templates, 2 logos, 1 brand platelet with 4 vibrant branding colors, easy to read fonts, and engaging design elements. These are files available on the internet. You go open them up, print your cards, print whatever banners you want, print whatever signs you want, and that's why they all look the same, and now you know how it's being done. Now, this group, Indivisible, also created a 12-page digital, quote, No Kings Toolkit for Host. Follow me through on this one because you're going to like this one. This is shared on Google Docs with messaging, No Kings Mobilization Tactics, Sample Event Agenda, and tips on, quote, getting media attention, unquote. Its tips noted, and I'm going to quote him here, identify at least one group member to be responsible for firing up the crowd, unquote. This is what's going on. This is what's happening. So if you think this whole thing is organized by regular people just because they don't like the Trump administration, hey, you can protest. That's fine. But this is being done by the Democrat Party and 465 groups who are going together, pooling their money together because they want to take control of the government. You heard me right. They want control of the government to run it their way. And this comes from the American Teachers Federation. This comes from Al Sharpton. This comes from all these different groups, all these different union organizations, PAC organizations, progressive Democrats, Bernie Sanders. How about the ACLU, the Sierra Club, League for Conservative Voters? I mean, it goes on and on. Totals up 465 groups. And for you folks out there think, oh, I don't like Trump, I want to protest. You know what you are? You end up becoming useful idiots. That term is not one I've invented. That one is used by other people and other people with well-known names. That's what you become. So be careful in your protesting. You think you're doing this because you're doing it for the right reasons, because you don't like someone? That's your right. You have every right to do that. But when you're being manipulated by a group, by a socialist group who wants to take control of this country and run it their way, then that, my friends, you are being used as a useful idiot. Now you understand what's going on and where the money's coming from. Well, there's been a lot of talk about why that Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner went down over in India. And as a retired United States Air Force pilot, I flew from 1970 to 1995. And one of the planes I flew was a Boeing 720B. I happen to think that's the safest airplane that Boeing ever made, but that's my opinion. So I'm giving my opinion based on that aircraft. Now, the 787B is a very unique airplane. The things that control it are hydraulics and electricity. And you've got a lot of hydraulics on that plane. Everything flies by hydraulics and electricity. So when you're getting ready to take off, there's one of the things you have to do is set the flaps. Now, the flap setting for that aircraft are 5 degrees or 15 degrees. Normal takeoff is 5 degrees. You use 15 if you got a shorter runway, but you have to determine your liftoff speeds, your takeoff speeds, your V1 speeds, rotate speeds, and what have you, based upon your weight and the conditions around the aircraft, a bunch of other stuff. But so pilot's rolling down the runway. It's going to reach a speed called V1. And the co-pilot will say, V1, that's your commit speed. The next speed the co-pilot's going to call out to the pilot is VR. That's a rotate speed. Pilot pulls back on the yoke about 15 degrees to raise the aircraft indicator on his FD-109 or whatever he happens to be using. Pull it up to the indices. Set it right there. That's where the plane is going to launch. So you got it there. Plane's going to go up. Plane's going to start leaving the ground. And when you're getting up, you see the gauges are showing you're up in the air. Gear up. That's the next thing you're going to do when you're positive rate of climb. That's what you're getting. Positive rate, gear up. The co-pilot reaches over, pulls up the gear. That aircraft that you saw, that 787, that gear never went up. And that got me to thinking, why didn't the gear go up? Because he was about 600 feet up in the air. That gear should have been stowed a long time ago. Well, here's one possibility that happened. This is a possibility. What if when the pilot said, gear up, and instead of the gear, the co-pilot mistakenly went flaps up? Now, if you raise the flaps at that early in the takeoff, that airplane ain't going to want to fly anymore. It's going to start settling down. It's going to start dropping down because it doesn't have enough airspeed to fly. It needs that flaps to create greater lift on the wing. So if the co-pilot made a mistake and saying, instead of positive rate, gear up, he did positive rate and he brought the flaps up, that aircraft's going to start sinking. Now, that was my first inclination, thinking that's what happened. And I went, yeah, that's a reasonable thing, thinking the co-pilot screwed up. Instead of putting up the gear, because the gear was never up, put up the flaps. Flaps up, that plane ain't going to want to fly. It's going to sink. And it did. That was my first thought. But then I learned something else that made me think something else. And here's what I'm going to say my second idea, miss. They took off, and what happened was the pilot issued a mayday call shortly after takeoff saying lost thrust, no thrust. Well, if you've got no thrust on an aircraft, it ain't going to keep going up. It's going to lose its speed. If it loses its speed, it's going to start sinking. Now, why would it lose thrust? Well, apparently, if you look at the history of that aircraft, apparently it had some emergency landings. I don't know what the reason was. I haven't seen the records, so I don't know. But there were people on that aircraft that said inside the aircraft, the air conditioning wasn't working, the TVs weren't working, even the call light for the stewardess or the flight attendant wasn't working. Something was going on with the electrical system. And the electrical system, if that aircraft wasn't working properly, is it possible that the electrical system on that aircraft failed on takeoff, some way, shape, or form? Now, there's a lot of backups on that aircraft, a lot of backups. And you got the engines, you got the centerline stuff. But if something happened, was already bad before they even started going, and it gave out, that might explain something. And then the last thing I heard, someone said, and there's pictures to indicate this, that the rat may have been deployed. And you're saying, rat? What's a rat? Rat is a ram air turbine. And it's located under the aircraft. You got to be careful when you're walking around. You don't want to be under that thing, whatever comes out. But it's a turbine, and it's got propeller on it. And what it does, it gets down into the slipstream, the air, and the propeller starts spinning. Well, that spinning creates electricity. Now, that's an adjustable pitch prop on that rat, and it spins at a certain rate. But it does spin. It creates electricity, which is a backup for the pilots to use in case that they need, well, hydraulic pressure, and they need electricity to make the airplane fly, because the 787 flies on two things, electricity and hydraulics. Well, that ram has got enough, doesn't have enough power to let you pull the gear up. Can't do that because that's a lot of electricity it takes to get that done. But it allows the pilot to fly. And if the rat had been, if it had been exposed, those happen in emergencies, folks. That happens when you lose power. That rat drops down and starts functioning to give the pilot power. So now I'm beginning to think maybe, just maybe, that aircraft suffered a severe power loss. And the fact that the aircraft wasn't powered on the inside, the air conditioning, the lighting, the TV, and even the attendant calls button wasn't working, that tells me that something was wrong electrically in that aircraft. Now they have the black boxes, and they will be able to determine something that was going on, and they should be able to determine what happened, because when that plane crashed, it was probably doing about, I'm saying, around 160 knots, approximately. Everybody was killed on the aircraft, and people were killed on the ground except one individual. He was seated in flight 11, seat row 11A. That's where he was seated, right next to the escape hatch. They're all over the airplane. A lot of people don't like sitting next to that because they have additional responsibilities. But he sat there, was able to get out that escape hatch and get free. Only person who survived. And when the good Lord wants you, he's going to take you. And apparently at that moment, the good Lord didn't want him. So they're saying roughly 290 people died when you consider the folks on the ground, the 242 in the plane, souls on board. But right now I was thinking maybe it was a problem that the co-pilot put up the flaps instead of the gear. But now with that ram air turbine coming down, you can almost see it in video. Something tells me I think it was loss of power. And if they lost complete power on the airplane and the rat comes out, it ain't going to fly, folks. It's going to come down. And at that speed, takeoff, you're heavy. Well, it's a one-way ticket, and the ticket ain't good. I'm just telling you my observation on it. They will find out soon enough. But now you know my take on what I think probably happened to the Air India Flight 171, Boeing 787 Dreamliner, crashed on takeoff. And is there a problem? They're going to find out. And if there is, this could be a really big issue with the Dreamliner. So on Saturday afternoon, you had a few options what you wanted to watch. What you could watch is the parade, the Army celebrating 250 years, and the president's birthday happened to be on the same day. Or else you could have turned around other channels. You can watch the No Kings demonstrations around the United States. Not all of them went well. Some did not. In fact, many did not. Only ones that apparently went well were in the bigger cities. And yes, everybody had them. And fortunately, there was no violence for the most part. It was all pretty clean. But this thing about saying no kings, and I got to wondering about that. So I sort of do a little research to figure out what they mean by no kings. Well, apparently, the people in the United States, dating clear back to 1776, didn't want a king because back when England was controlling America for the Revolution, there was kings and they were running the rodeo. And they'd pass it down to their sons or daughters. I mean, it was a succession of people in monarchy that ran the world. Well, obviously, the revolution came along and we smited the British, if you will. But George Washington went in front of the Congress. He said, hey, listen, I don't want to be a king. I'm not interested in being a king. And if you want me as your president, that's fine, but I don't believe I should be a king serving this thing for the rest of my life and handing it off to my kids. So what happened was, starting in 1776, the presidents all served 2 4-year terms. That's what they did. Now, some didn't serve very long. One president, I think William Henry Harrison, like 31 days. Some people longer than that. And some people didn't serve out their full term, 4-year terms for a number of reasons. And some got sick, some were shot. I mean, there was a whole lot of reasons some people didn't serve out their full term. But as a rule, it was 2 terms. Well, that was until 1933. And then America, we did get a king. You know who the king was? Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a staunch Democrat. You heard me right. FDR was a Democrat who was elected and started serving in March of 1933. And as far as being a king, he was serving in office until 1945 when he died. That's when Harry S. Truman took over. S doesn't mean for anything, by the way. Harry S. Truman took over when Roosevelt died. Roosevelt was on his 4th term? And he would have probably been elected for even longer. Roosevelt would have been your king. Except he was in the Democrat Party, and apparently you don't want to talk about that. So there's the skinny. Roosevelt, he was your king from 1933 to 1945 when he died in office. Now, to stop having any kings, the United States of America, through the 22nd Amendment, that's the United States of America, I should point out, had to vote on it and said, presidents get 2 terms. That's all they get. 2 terms. No more King Roosevelt like they had with the Democrat Party. So, 2 terms. For you to say that Donald Trump can go longer than 2 terms, he can't. I mean, he knows it. You got you're in, you do your 2 terms, you're out. It's the way the world works. That's the way the rules are. But he ain't a king. Doesn't want to be a king. So why's all the demonstrations about having a king? Who's behind those demonstrations? Well, it turns out if you do a little bit of looking, you do a little bit of digging, and find out who's behind it, these are all operatives and all people associated with the Democrat Party. You can yell and holler at me all you want to, but the numbers are there. American Federation of Teachers, Communications Workers of America. I could name the groups. There's 186 groups, all affiliated with the Democrat Party, putting all their money. Oh, and don't forget, Reverend Al, part of this too, in his Action Network, whatever it is. They were all putting money behind this. They even had one group called Indivisible. They had a website where you could print out signs, had all the formats available, all the documents to go with it. This was orchestrated. This was run by the Democratic Party to get people out there thinking that Donald Trump was going to be king. Turns out the people who were out there were nothing more than, sadly, useful idiots. because that's what the Democrat Party wanted. They want you to believe that Donald Trump is going to be king. No, the only king we had in America was FDR from 1933 until 1945. That's 12 years. And he was going for 16 and maybe more. He was the king, a Democrat, until the America voted and said, 22nd Amendment, 2 terms. That's it. Just want you to think about that. It wasn't something about being king. There was no reason. The whole king thing was a ruse. It was a put on to make you think something. And it was done by one party. And that's what this is all about, folks. There are parties that will go to any lengths they want to win, to take back control, take back power. And that's what happened in this thing. There was no king. There's Donald Trump can't be a king. He's limited to 2 terms. The only one who was king was a Democrat himself, FDR, 1933 to 1945. Do the math, figure it out. Now you understand something. You've been had. You've been bamboozled. You've been strung along. Had nothing to do with being a king. It had to do with one party being angry. They're out of power and want to get power and are going to do it again in whatever it takes. Hopefully now you understand. Back in the days when Joe Biden was elected president, suddenly the gates of America were thrown open wide. And people started coming to America in, droves. And droves is probably a bad word to use because it's not sufficient enough. They came in multitudes. Frankly, some we know about, most we don't. It was a mess. And right now they're guessing somewhere between 12 and 20 million people came into America. And most of them, when given a chance, where do you want to go? Because we were giving you free airplane rides. Hey, where do you want to go to? Most people pick places that were sanctuary cities. Cities like New York, Chicago, Denver, Los Angeles, all those kind of cities. Not many in Miami, Florida, by the way, because they weren't a Miami, or they weren't a sanctuary city. Apparently, they didn't want to go down there. But all the other sanctuary cities that are protecting illegals are going to those cities. Well, now there's a new sheriff in town. Donald Trump and Tom Homan is the head of the Border Patrol. They said, hey, we're getting these people out. We're going to start with the criminals. And they're taking criminals out in big time. Because you got to remember something. Back in the Bill Clinton era, he deported over 400, probably almost 450,000 people. Clinton did. In case you haven't looked, look it up. Your guy deported people. Trump says we're getting these people out, but you got 20 million people. So why are the Democrats saying protect them? We want to have a being here. They got to have a legal representation. They got to have all the legal stuff that, frankly, they are not entitled to. And why keep them in the United States? Okay, let me tell you why. In 5 years, 60 months, we have a thing called the U.S. Census. Census is taken every 10 years to find out how many people exist in every part of the United States, every city, every state, how many people they have. Back in 2017, Donald Trump tried to make it such of the census form, you had to be a citizen to be counted. Supreme Court, believe it or not, said, no, Constitution said people. So now people get counted in the census, not American citizens. And people mean illegals as well as regular Americans. Undocumented individuals, call them what you want, they are counted in the census. And let's say when the census comes down and all those blue cities are still being blue, still letting nobody out, still Democrats fighting to keep everybody here in the United States. And the reason they're fighting to keep them here is because of the census. This was a long-term game the Democrats played, and Chuck Schumer admitted it. Said, we need votes. Back in 1987, President was Ronald Reagan. And the Speaker of the House was a guy named Tip O'Neill. Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan were actually friends. Tip would come over to the White House, and he and Reagan sit on the balcony, sip adult beverages. And Tip O'Neill talked Ronald Reagan into turning 8 million people who were not citizens, not registered to be citizens, 8 million people, and talked Reagan into making them citizens, and he did. This was 1987, 8 million people. After Reagan left office, he said that was the worst decision he ever made. But the people who are here now are saying, well, it happened once before. It can happen again. Now, 20 million people. Let's assume that number is correct, 20 million. So when the census starts counting, and back in 2030, when they started counting, they're counting everybody. And suddenly there's a huge increase in the number of people in the United States. Why, it went from 330 million to 350 million. Went up all of a sudden. Well, that means for every 700,000, 740,000. Okay, there's the number, 740,000. For all that number of people, you get one U.S. congressman. One congressman for every 740,000 people. So if you have, let's say, 20 million new people counted, and let's say that's the number, well, just divide 20 million by 740,000, and that tells you how many new United States House of Representatives you're going to have. And the bet is from the Democrats, the majority of those new representatives are going to be Democrats. And let's say you get 20 new members of the House. I'm just using that as a rough number, 20 members. That would overwhelm the Republicans big time. And as a result, the Republicans probably wouldn't be in control of the House for maybe the foreseeable future. Who knows? Because all the new people that came in the 2020 census created so many new members of the House, and they all came from sanctuary states, California, New York, Illinois. All those people, they'd all be Democrats, and they would effectively run the House of Representatives. So what would happen? Well, the House would go, and then eventually, the worry is, eventually the Senate would also go completely Democrat. And then if they can elect a Democrat president, here's what the scenario is. So now you've got the House controlled by the Republicans, or by the Democrats in a huge margin, because all those new people that were counted in 2030. And then you've got the Senate eventually goes Democrat. Then you get a Democrat House president in there like Ocasio-Cortez, because she is leading in the polls, friends. Whether you like it or not, she is. So if she's leading and becomes president OC, then you know what the Congress could decide to do? Hey, let's grant amnesty to everybody who's in here, all these illegals who came in, who don't want to be part of the American culture. They want to have their own culture. If they're kind of Mexican culture, that's what they want. They want to speak Spanish, fine, that's what they're going to speak, no English. Because if you don't have people speaking English in one country, you're going to lose your country. But anyway, so you have all those new representatives, and because you give them free stuff, why, free health care, free Medicare, free this, why, we put you on Social Security. You're going to vote for that Democrat that put you in there. So they're going to say, hey, yeah, let's make all these people citizens. Swipe of a pen. The House and Senate can do that. You, the public, don't vote on that. The House and Senate do. We're making them all citizens. Suddenly, the country has changed, and the country has changed basically forever. Just telling you why the fight is going on, so to keep the illegals in this country, because it's all about the 2030 census, where everybody is counted. And if you count everybody, guess where the population could be swinging to? The Democrat Party with all those new representatives. And that's exactly the game they were playing, and they will have won. Game, set, and match.
Happy